Hello and good afternoon/evening. Welcome to Live Long and Podcast. I'm Dave Mader. This is a new series we're launching here today on the channel called The Captain's Yacht. And I'm joined today with my cousin and your cousin, my first officer, Davan Skelhorn. And we are honored to be joined by astronomer, actor, director, and musician, Tim Russ. Of course, Tim is best known as Tuvok on Star Trek Voyager, but he was also cast in the role in other Star Trek properties before that, including Devore in the Next Generation episode Starship Mine, Takar in the Deep Space Nine episode Invasive Procedures. He was the tactical officer on the Enterprise B in Star Trek Generations, and has appeared in numerous other properties, including Live Free or Die Hard, The People Next Door, Samantha Who, iCarly. And Tim's band, the Tim Russ Crew, can currently be found at cdbaby.com and iTunes, and he performs regularly in Los Angeles with his band. Got the chance to see him on Star Trek The Cruise that I just got back from. And as a director, Tim, his projects include Star Trek Voyager, the episode Living Witness, one of my all-time favorites, Star Trek Renegades, as well as the FBI Files, and feature films like Star Trek Of Gods and Men, Night at the Silent Movie Theater, and the award-winning web series Bloomers, as well as an Emmy Award for directing several PSA commercials. And Tim is an amateur astronomer for the last 35 years, assisted NASA on their Lucy mission, and he owns a 10-inch Dobsonian telescope, an 8-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope, and a unistellar EV scope. Tim, welcome to the show. We are so happy to have you with us. Good day. Hello, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. What an intro. You're supposed to add all-around cool guy at the end of every
all-around cool guy. Absolutely. One of the best. Hello. So we're going to talk to you for the next hour or so, and this is an absolute honor for me and for Davan.
I'm a big Tuvok fan, and of yourself, of course.
And of yourself, yeah. Like Starship Mine was one of my favorite episodes before you did Voyager, and then we did when we were covering the Deep Space Nine here on the podcast. You came in as that Takar character, and he's one of the most menacing Klingons I think ever done. That episode Invasive Procedures is kind of a dark one, and you were so villainous in that particular version. And then of course as Tuvok and Davan and I were of high school age, if not, tweens, I guess, when we started Star Trek Voyager, and that kind of carried through all our high school years. So I was watching you every single week on that show. So, I'm trying not to get too starstruck, but it's amazing to have you. When I saw you on the cruise, you were just kind of walking around the Windjammer, and I was like, there he goes. He's going back to the buffet. He's going along. Adam saw you in the business center checking your emails, and we were definitely aware of you. But I said I was like, I don't know if I want to come up to you while you're eating, so I'm glad I got a chance to email with you and get you on the show today. So this is an absolute thrill. So maybe we can we'll jump right into the questions. In terms of your early life and acting career, I understand you're from the Washington D.C. area originally. Grew up with a father in the military, if I'm correct. And
yes.
You were
moved around a lot. I mean, I was my dad was 20 years in the Air Force, so I moved every couple of years. I lived in Asia. I lived in Turkey. I lived in different parts of the U.S. And all the way up to when I was 18. And when I left at 18, I left home to go to college, which was in Austin, Texas. So I think that that sort of upbringing may or may not have led to the life that I chose to pursue, just in terms of conditioning me for this type of work, to try to survive doing this type of work. I went away and studied it for 4 or 5 years in college, and I guess obviously when I got back to LA, studying more in workshops and things like that. So, and deciding to pursue it. All that started when I was probably 16, 17. And haven't looked back since. been a hell of a long journey, to say the least. And music's been around since I was 15, 16, running up on 50 years now. And that's always been sort of parallel track to it. I've played many different styles over the years, still playing today. So I was lucky enough, I think, when I started out to pursue acting as a profession here in Los Angeles at a time when there was a lot more work in Los Angeles. All the shows, a lot of shows were shooting here in town, and so there were a lot of opportunities for featured players, guest star players, they call under fives, day players. Those roles were all available because a lot of the shows that were shooting, that were on television, were all shooting here. And so there was a lot more work available for actors who were just starting out to try to build their credits and their experience. And also to, once you got into the loop, to actually be able to support yourself doing it. Much different now than it used to be. So I just hit it, I think, at a very good time in the business when a lot of the business was here.
Right, and you've been in Los Angeles pretty much your whole adult life. Then you're saying?
Yeah, I've been here since I was 26. I moved here at 26.
26.
It's been 40 years at least.
I was meaning to ask you too. Were you affected by the wildfires in Los Angeles when all that was going on?
Very close. So there's one fire. The Sunset Fire was close to my house. So yeah, that was kind of scary at the time. We fortunately had the Hollywood Reservoir was right there, so they could do water drops consistently for at least an hour and a half. And the winds kind of died down, so that basically stopped the fire in its tracks. Otherwise, it could have been a different story.
Wow. Well, glad you're okay. Glad your home is okay.
Oh yeah.
That's good to hear. So I only recently found out that you were in Spaceballs. I of course saw that years ago, but I hadn't put that together that you were the same person.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was wondering about your career as it relates to science fiction. Is of course you've done things that are not science fiction, but are you yourself a fan of science fiction, or is that more something that has just been the way it worked out?
Yeah, no. Coincidentally, I have always been a fan of sci-fi since I was a kid. I've always been a fan of sci-fi in general. I loved, the old classic movies, Time Machine, Journey to the Center of the Earth, War of the Worlds, things like that. I've always been a fan of science fiction. I've read science fiction ravenously for years. So I do like the genre. I really appreciate it. Twilight Zone, all those kind of things, Outer Limits. They're always fascinating to me. The genre allows for a wide variety of storytelling, and it's much more intriguing and it's much more challenging, and it challenges the human condition, and that's something I really am fascinated with. So I really enjoy the genre, and it just coincidentally I end up working on a sci-fi series. It was just by chance. It could have easily been Baywatch.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah. Were you
okay? Oh yeah. Now my mic was messed up before. All right.
Oh, okay.
You mentioned a time when there was more work in California. Yeah. I know that's a lot because some stuff's in Vancouver, some's in Atlanta, and it's just a lot of different locations now. Yes. But do you think there's also like a bit more insular storytelling now, where you find like smaller casts, less guest stars, and that sort of thing on shows? Because I like watching your role on Picard was amazing. Like the changeling Tuvok was super sinister, and I watched it and it just made me think. It's just like if this were a show like in the '90s when Voyager was on, like that Tuvok changing would have got up and we would have saw him walk out of the room and do a bunch of sinister stuff, and it would have been amazing. But now there's not much more time because it's also insular to the main characters. I find now does that cut down on the amount of work? Do you?
Yeah, maybe to some degree. It just depends. I think it's more so about the location of shooting. They're going to places where it's a right to work state, or there's incentives in the states, tax incentives, and places like Canada, you can save up to 60-70% on your production. So
Right.
you're going to go shoot up there. Especially if it's a series. Series is long term, so you're planted there for a while, and you're able to capitalize on the series because of your initial airings and then your reruns and syndication for who knows how long. And your overhead to produce the project is cut by 60% or more. So runaway production began while I was working. Stephen Cannell was one of the first producers to take his projects to Vancouver, and eventually just kept going and going and going. They're in Toronto, they're in Vancouver, they're wherever. It's not, and or Atlanta, sometimes in New York, but mostly Atlanta is a huge hub now for production work. So it's the way it is. It's economics. It's expensive to shoot in LA. Always has been.
Yeah, well, we're as I mentioned when we were emailing, we're up in Canada in different parts. I'm near Toronto, and Davan's in Halifax.
If you ever find yourself just filming a Stephen King series in Nova Scotia, drop me a line. We'll jam. I think we have a lot of the same musical instinct. I think we'd have a good jam.
That sounds good, man. That sounds good. What do you play? What music do you play? What instrument?
Guitar and harmonica.
All right.
Yeah.
Actually,
not a guitarist like yourself. I have another guy who can do that, but
okay.
little rhythm guitar and harmonica and sing.
All right,
Yeah.
man. All right.
That's a good question here we have from Worldmind. He's saying, what musicians and bands did you gravitate towards during your learning years in music? Like, who are your influences?
Well, I grew up during the classic rock era, the supergroups, when bands were actually a thing. They aren't so much today. Today, it's all about solo artists. So the bands have basically disappeared. I grew up with the bands Chicago. Terry Kath was an influence on mine. Santana, Carlos Santana, also an influence. Since that time, Peter Gabriel, Bruce Hornsby, and a few others, influence in terms of music styles. And in terms of guitar work and stuff, it would be mostly, I think, Santana and Chicago, Terry Kath. Those were my two most prominent influences growing up.
And I just got back from Star Trek: The Cruise #8 that you were also on, as we've kind of mentioned, and I got the chance to see the Tim Russ band crew on the cruise. I was blown away. I saw you coming into the cruise. You had the guitar with you on your back, and I was like, I guess he plays guitar. I wonder what he's gonna do. And then I went to your show that night, and I was like, this is amazing. This is some of the best live music I've seen in a long time. Your keyboardist and drummer were great, as well, and some of those songs you played, I was just like, I need to get this album. I was just so thrilled, and I've been a fan of yours, most of my life, but I didn't know that about you, so that was really cool to learn. And then, of course, we got to see in the documentary, which we got a preview on, which Sam's asking here, when is that coming out? I don't know if you would know the answer to that more specifically, but it seems like this year.
It's very soon. It's like this spring it'll be out, as far as I know.
Oh, this spring.
Yeah,
This spring.
that's what they told me.
And so
how
I got
many
to see
instruments do you play, Tim?
Just guitar and bass. I used to play bass. I used to sit in with another band on bass all the time. I haven't played it that much recently. It's mostly a 6-string guitar and secondarily bass and vocals. That's it.
I was wondering if it was you playing the keys on one of those songs.
Nope. I do not play anybody's keyboards. I will hire somebody to do that.
I have one sitting right there, and same thing. It's just like I want to teach the 4-year-old.
I have one in my house. I just never took the time to sit down and learn how to play it.
But it looks so cool when you do.
Cool. Yes. It's the main instrument. I mean, if you're a songwriter,
it is.
That it's good to know keyboards. No question about it.
Well, and I did want to get back to the documentary and just ask you, did you get a chance to see that? It's called To the Journey.
Yes.
While you were on board, and what was your you don't have to spoil anything. Just what your reaction to the film and the first cut of it?
Well, I think I saw the first cut. I did not see the cut on the ship, which is a recut.
Okay.
So they there was more material that involved Garrett on the original. And they trimmed that back, and they included a piece with myself doing a Zoom call with the space station.
Right.
And that they included into the second cut, which I thought was cool. But I thought it was very good because they looked at different aspects of the producing of Voyager. It wasn't just the cast. It was behind the scenes, including the producers and writers. And I thought that insight for people who have watched the show is really informative, to find out and hear some of the stories and some of the back and forth and some of the conflicts that occurred and behind the scenes. I thought that was very interesting that they put that particular amount of that material in there in both of these versions. So that I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, me too.
Did you say they cut Garrett? Harry Kim cannot catch a break, eh?
Well, he's still in there. It's just that segment is not really related to the show. So
yeah,
right.
Neither is the segment with me in the Zoom call either. Is not related to the show. It's just an extra piece. So I mean, they wanted to throw that in. It's fine. If it were me, I might have put both of those things in the extras that come along with the DVD if you get it or whatever. The stuff that you can get on the extras. That's good stuff for the extras. Typically, I would have focused almost all of it on the documentary about the show and everything to do directly with the show. That would have been my choice. But they put it out there, and I'm hoping that people will enjoy it. It's very informative, and the curtains are pulled back so you can see what's going on, how the sausage is made, as it were.
Yes, absolutely.
I thought you weren't supposed to want to see how the sausage is made.
I always want to know. I want to know where the ingredients come from too.
I think people always want to know how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
Insatiable curiosity. Yeah.
You're probably right.
This is the 30th anniversary of Voyager when the show debuted in the first season, corresponding with the launch of this documentary to come out this year. And when you reflect back on your time on the show, how in maybe in pairing with the having viewed that film recently, what is your sort of general feeling consensus about your years on that show?
Well, my consensus is that I was sitting there watching and I could not remember, having done all that work. I could not remember my state of mind. I couldn't remember, actually doing the work and whatever scenes those were on the show necessarily. Maybe only a handful of them I could remember actually doing. So it was kind of a nostalgic thing for me to watch. It was such a long time ago, and that work all sort of blended together in those 7 years. It's very much a routine. It's very much the same thing every day. And so there's nothing that stands out when you're doing that work. And that work is single camera work, is routine and monotonous. That's what it is. You go home, you're tired, you're working 15 hours a day or more. You got to learn dialogue that they just changed that very night, the next day. And that's all you're doing. And you're just slugging away at this stuff every day. You don't have time to get anything else done. It's just that. So when it's all finished, that's all anybody sees is what's on television. And that's just not how it's done.
So that's it. Go ahead, Dave. I lost my train of thought there for a second.
Well, I got a chance to sit in two panels. So the first there was two Voyager panels on the cruise. The one was with you and Garrett and Robbie McNeil and Brandon Braga and Jerry Ryan was in the first panel. And in the second panel, it was Kate Mulgrew and Roxanne Dawson and Ethan Phillips and I think I'm forgetting one more. Brandon was also in that panel.
Yes.
And one of the most heartwarming moments for me was in the second panel, particularly because Roxanne says, to Kate Mulgrew, she says, I've been watching the show. They're playing it on the ship here all the time. And we were really good. We were so good when we were on the show. And, you talk about how you'd kind of forgotten about the whole process of going through it and maybe having not really necessarily gone back to watch it at the time. And
yes.
You were excellent. Look, your cast, maybe my favorite chemistry in terms of all the casts of all the
they had the most chemistry, I think. So I agree. I remember my question now too.
Yeah.
Because so you mentioned not being able to remember most of the acting as you were
Yes.
doing it. So it made me want to ask this question even more. Was there ever like a piece of acting on that show that you witnessed one of your castmates do where you just like, it kind of just took you off guard and you're like, wow, like that's acting right there.
Yeah, well, there were some moments here and there that I can't necessarily pinpoint the episode or whatever it was now. There were moments in which I was pretty impressed with them, and also with the guest stars that we had on the show as well. We had a lot of guest stars, and they were usually saddled with all the work. And to me, the most impressive work was Tom Wright on the Tuvok episode. I'm sorry, but that guy
Really
had
good.
the longest week of his life on the show to carry out that role. That to me was one of the most special. It is the most talked about episode of the series, but he did such a magnificent job of blending our two characters together, and had mountains of dialogue. And that's word perfect dialogue. You can't just paraphrase that stuff. It has to be word perfect on that show. If you want to change one word, you have to call the producers from the set and get permission. So you had to be word perfect on those takes. And he had mountains of dialogue that changed every day that he had to get right. And he had to,
really?
Both of those characters, yes, we all did. Both of those characters we had to play and go back and forth between the two of them, sometimes within the space of one line of dialogue. And that to me was miraculous when he pulled that off.
So, was that just a Tuvix episode thing, or were like those constant rewrites always the way?
It's always the way. That's the rewrites we'd get. We didn't have PDFs back then. We couldn't get them on our laptops. They delivered them by hand to our apartments or houses at night, sometimes 11, 12 at night. We'd have them the next morning, and we'd have to get the stuff, the changes or whatever, while we're sitting in the makeup chair trying to figure out what the dialogue changes are. So those rewrites were literally all week long for each episode. Each episode is only 7 days. The average shooting for episodes today is 10 days. We shot in 7 days. We did 26 episodes a year. To do that, all the stuff that just, it's a cacophony of stuff. I haven't seen the majority of the episodes that we filmed. I haven't seen most of them, obviously because I worked on them and knew what the stories were, but I haven't watched them all back. And to go along with what Roxanne says, the last time I was on this Trek cruise, I did watch a few episodes. And boy, those are some good stories.
Oh yeah.
Looking at them in the context, all cut together, and the way they were played out, there were some very good stories. And
you mentioned,
and I think I was impressed with Robert Beltran, some of the roles he had for his heavier episodes. Very impressed with the work he produced. Ethan Phillips as well. Bob Picardo also. Some really good work on the show. Yeah.
If you haven't watched them, go back and watch the ones you did with Brad Dourif, because those are fantastic.
Oh, Meld. Yeah, Meld, man. That was a piece of work. That was. The very few opportunities I have in the 7 years on the show to not control the emotions, to be able to show any kind of emotion at all. And that was one of the episodes that, I could break out of that box for a second. It was a wonderful challenge for me to do that.
Yeah, there were some amazing episodes, Tuvok featured episodes. I remember that one with the Maquis, like where you had to go, kind of break them in.
Yes, that's right. Training. You had to train them. Yeah.
The training every episode, and you're making them run.
Human shell, 10 laps around the cargo bay.
10 laps around the cargo bay.
Yeah.
That and Rise with Ethan Phillips, I loved.
Oh yeah, great episode. The one with the lift, the broken elevator.
Yeah, the lift, which is a scientific theory, to be able to.
The tether.
Space elevator. Yeah. So, it was a murder mystery. It was a mystery, crime mystery, and he and I go head to head. I mean, we're back at each other's throats, back and forth. And I thought that was such a telling episode, and it was a moment of growth for Tuvok's character, having to understand Neelix's point of view, and to sympathize with him, to empathize with him, to compromise with him. So I think that was a very special episode. I thought very cool.
And I wanted to ask you one more thing about Tuvix as well, because because of course you're in the beginning of the episode and you're at the end of the episode, but there's never really any kind. It's never addressed again with the characters. You know, like I've always wondered, do Neelix and Tuvok remember everything as Tuvix? Do they were those experiences?
I would doubt it. I would doubt any of them. I think when they were gone, they were gone, and. It's the captain's responsibility to the safety and welfare of her crew. That's first priority.
Right.
The character cannot reproduce. We can. And, we are part of her crew. Her job is to preserve her crew. That's it, man. Sorry. That's the way things go.
Because you and Neelix both materialize on the bio bed at the end of that episode, and then Captain Janeway walks out, and she's just like, devastated with what she's had to do, which, and the choice she's made, but feeling that it's the right one. And then it never comes up again, really. But
nope. It does. It leaves you. It leaves the audience with something to think about. I don't think that we remembered anything at all, which is why, you don't see it. I think in the episode is we don't remember anything. We are another.
I read you auditioned for the role of Geordi LaForge.
Yes, I did.
So let's just assume that happened in another multiverse somewhere, another universe in the multiverse. Mm-hmm. But now, when you look back at those two roles, if you could choose one or the other, do you think you would choose Tuvok, or do you think
absolutely?
Yeah,
Tuvok in about a second.
Yeah.
I don't need the techno babble, man.
Yeah,
not my favorite thing. But to date, it's not my favorite thing. Like now, it's not my favorite thing. No, thank you very much. I prefer the dialogue that's, at the very least, it's got some kind of emotional content to it, something to do with this. It's personable, not just a bunch of technical dialogue. Don't need it. Don't need it. Don't want it.
The tactical officer gets a little bit better in that regard compared to the engineers.
Much better. Like light years better, if you will.
Absolutely. I also like your voice work in video games is one of the things that really I'm a huge fan of. Mm-hmm. You did this game in near the end of Voyager's run. It was called Star Trek Voyager Elite Force.
Yes.
Which was like a first-person shooter game built on the Quake engine that was massive for me. And Tuvok is the main. He's the main of the lead characters. He's like the leader of this hazard team. He's teaching all these young ensigns how to fight and everything else.
Right.
And I love that game so much. It's an amazing story.
Yeah.
And then the other one is Star Trek Online that you've been in quite a bit. As Admiral Tuvok in that story, going back to the Delta Quadrant, you have a whole scene or episode in that game where you reunite with Neelix and the Doctor after 30-something years, and they were talking about, could there ever be a Voyager movie? Could there ever be something else like this? I'm like, I feel like it already kind of exists in some ways, like a sequel to those characters. And I guess in terms you have of course you have your film roles, your television roles, but in terms of your video game work, do you think about that a lot, or do you come reflect back on that stuff as much, or is it more you record it in the studio and you kind of move on?
Yeah, those are those just turn out to be gigs of one type or another for voiceover work. I almost never see the games after they're done. They never usually send them to me. I think I got a copy of Elite Force. I think I do have a DVD of Elite Force in there, but Star Trek Online I have not. I've only seen flashes of it, and all the other games they don't half the time don't inform me as to when they're being released, and I don't get them. I don't have copies of them. I don't see them. Haven't played them. I've heard about them all the time from people who do play them, but that's it. So they kind of come and go, and usually when I work on them, they don't give me the titles. They give you a code name. So I don't even know what the game is when it's released until somebody tells me, oh, I saw you on such and such, and I don't even know what that is because they didn't tell me what the name of the game was I was working on. So,
In the first game, in Elite Force, like because it's like a Quake engine game, and you can kind of have these little gloats after you kill somebody. All the characters have these amazing like one-liners. Like so for Tuvok, it is
You require more training.
right, or
Yeah.
You lack mental discipline.
But my favorite is Chakotay's because he's the most cocky. Where is that one? Sorry, Chakotay. That's why they call me number one. Here it is.
That's why they call me number one.
That's the best one of them all. So anyway, so those games, like when I think about Voyager, of course, all like my fan, I'm on the show, watching the show, but that game and later on Star Trek Online, just reinforced like my familiarity with you and the characters and everything else. So I want to thank you very much for amazing work done, even if it's out of context and it's a little tougher to approach maybe as an actor when you're doing it. But
it's a different kind. It's a different type of work. For Tuvok's roles, not so difficult because I've already done that character. But for the other stuff that I've done, it's, you're playing a different character altogether, and in a different setting, a different scenario, different story. So you have to show a lot of emotion in voiceover work, as opposed to when you're an actor, the camera does a lot of work to show and convey emotion, whereas in voiceover, it's all your voice. So you have to convey that and make it believable and honest based on what the character looks like and what they're doing, because people are hearing it being animated. So it's a very different type of work, voiceover work, than it is doing on-camera work. So some of the other games and stuff like that and playing, on occasion I'd be able to see what the character's going to look like beforehand. Sometimes I didn't, and I'd have to see it after it was done or catch a glimpse of it to find out what the character looked like that I was actually voicing. So
you appeared in World of Warcraft. You've been in The Last of Us. You've done as well Fallout 4.
Dragon Age,
Marvel Ultimate Alliance. You played Black Panther.
Mirror something, mirror. I don't know what it was called. Something mirror something. I don't remember. That was motion capture. And then recently, there's another game I just finished working on, which is a Lego game. So there's a bunch of
Those Lego games are good.
Horizon, got the wrong Horizon. Horizon something Horizon. I get a lot of feedback from people about that game.
Horizon Forbidden West.
Yes, I get a lot of people talking about that game. I've only seen a scene of it, which I think is on YouTube or something. I've only seen one scene from it, and I just remember I wasn't crazy about the voice that I did for that character because I didn't see the character before I did the voice. I would have liked to have done something different for that voice, but that's as it were, water under the bridge. Yeah.
So DS9 kind of got a bit of a resurgence after its documentary. Are you kind of expecting Voyager to be thrust into the zeitgeist a little bit more?
Probably. Once it comes out, there's going to be a lot of buzz about it, I think. It's really well made. And it's really insightful and detailed. And it just covers so much. I was very impressed with what they did to that. The documentaries, man, take mountains of work to complete compared to a feature film or something like that, because you have to travel all over the place to get people's interviews, and you've got to get so much footage, and you've got to cut all this stuff together, boil it down. It just goes on forever. So it's a monumental task putting those projects together, and when you see them back like that, I was really amazed at how well they came off. It was really well done. So I anticipate definitely some kind of buzz about that documentary.
One of the things in the DS9 documentary was like this hypothetical season 8 that they what would that have been like? That this documentary doesn't have that per se, but that's we already kind of know where some of these Voyager characters have ended up. Your character, we know, ends up as like Starfleet captain. We know that from Star Trek Prodigy that, you know, where Admiral Janeway partly ends up. The Doctor, he's on that show, but he's also part of this new Starfleet Academy show that's set in like the 32nd century. So there's other characters that, you know, we don't really know much about what's happening with B'Elanna Torres, for instance, or with Seven of Nine. Of course, we do. Tom Paris and Harry Kim have appeared in Lower Decks only.
There's fun stories with them in the comics right now. Like B'Elanna and Tom and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of which, you wrote a couple of DS9 comics, or like in on the story on those. I read
DS9 comments about
comics.
Comics? No.
Yeah.
No.
No, that's false information.
I have not written anything about
Fake
DS9.
news.
Okay, that's fake news because I read you wrote DS9
sir.
issues 29 and 30.
No, sir.
Comics.
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't
clearing
write.
that up now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One question here too from Worldmind. He's saying, how did it feel to get the call to be on Star Trek Picard and bring back Tuvok after that gap?
It was cool. I mean, I took it as an appreciation for the work I did on that character, and for them to bring me back and resurrect that character for the 2 episodes. I thought it was an honor to some degree to be able to do that. Sure, it was good. It was cool. I look forward to it. Working on the 2 episodes, even though I did not know what was going on until the very last minute because they didn't want any information to get out. But it was very cool. I enjoyed doing that, to resurrect his character.
An evil changeling Tuvok as well.
Yeah, which was even more fun. Yeah,
I wanted more. He smiled. He just all of a sudden he's just like, "Oh, I'm Tuvok. I'm Tuvok. I'm Tuvok."
Yes.
It's like, you're not Tuvok.
Wait a minute.
Wait a minute. We don't know. Another question here too is you of course appeared on the Orville in that episode, Lasting Impressions. What was that experience like for you?
Orville, great cast, wonderful people to work with, as almost every show I've worked on. I got to tell you, it's just, I mean, that's 30. Let's see, since 1986. That many projects. I have never had one of them which I did not enjoy working with the people in those projects. Didn't matter what the budgets were, didn't matter if they were film or television, didn't matter what they were. Always had positive experiences with the other actors on those shows. That's a lot of shows. The Orville, a lot of takes for some of the setups and the shots that we had. That's what I was not expecting. It made for a fairly long day in terms of working. But that's, at the time, Seth was also, he executive produces the show. So he's in the scene, and then he has to go take a look at all the takes. And then he'll come back and then do them again, and go back and watch them. So it took a lot longer to shoot some of those sequences than it normally would have taken for a television project. So,
Right.
But he's very meticulous about everything. So it has to be perfect. And that's why the show is successful as it is. But yeah, that's the one thing I do remember. Because when I just worked with him recently on Ted, and it was not that way. He was directing it as well as exec producing it, and it was, the pace was very different. It was a different pace. It was like a normal pace for single camera work on television shows. Just a few takes or whatever to get what we needed, and then we move on. So that was a difference. Orville was much more meticulous in terms of.
Interesting, because it seems like he approaches those things differently.
Yeah, for some reason I'm not sure what that is, but there was definitely a difference between the two.
That particular episode that you're in is one of my all-time favorites. It's got this love story in it.
It's perfect. I love that. I love that episode. I love the concept, and I also love the character that I'm playing, being an archaeologist and studying history, because I love history, in general anyway. And that would be almost ancient history for them. It's ancient history somewhat. And so the whole thing with the time capsule and then him becoming enamored with this this woman who's in the time capsule from the time capsule. I thought was just
your character brings this iPhone from a time capsule that then ends up in Scott Grimes' character's hands, and then he's able to basically create like a recreation of her on the holodeck.
Yes.
And then he falls in love with this past
with this
person.
woman. Yes, that existed centuries ago,
right.
which is just fascinating. I mean, it's fascinating. That whole idea and concept is fascinating, and just not to mention the actual element of a time capsule in history. I mean, in our real history that we have now, that today is the most documented time in modern civilization since man has become civilized. Civilized with quotes. It has been the most documented time in our history. So in the future, this would be, if you had a question about what occurred or what happened, it's all recorded. Whereas in the past, it's a lot more sketchy as to who's telling the story, and whose version of the story is real or not, or how much of that information is available. We don't know what, Göbekli Tepe was designed for, and who made it, and who wasn't. And they're just scratching their heads trying to figure out what is this place, and who built it, and what happened to the people, and what was it for, and all this, because they don't have that information. And so for ancient history, it's something that in that show, they have a documented piece of history that's very specific and precise. And they can tell things were going on.
Yeah.
You and I share
Yes.
You and I share an interest in astronomy as well. I wonder if the interest in astronomy came before Star Trek.
No, way before. 35 plus years.
Yeah.
I've been doing astronomy.
You sent this image over of is it a comet that we're looking at here?
Yes, Comet Neowise. I think it's a medium to long period comet, and I imaged that with the telescope I had. I've imaged about 3 or 4 comets in the last couple of years. This one was
I wanted to ask if you were into the astrophotography. Because you can do that with your phone now. They have come with little slots for you to put your phone in. My telescope did.
I'm much more interested in visual astronomy. I've always been interested in visual astronomy. So even what I have now is a combination of a visual and imaging telescope. It's a combo. It's called a unistellar EV scope. So it has an eyepiece on it, and it's a light stacking setup. So it's designed for deep sky objects, not for super bright objects like the moon and planets. It'll do the moon and planets, but it's really designed for looking at objects that you cannot see with the naked eye. And it's designed to see those objects and to stack the light very, very quickly, and to be able to do it in the city of Los Angeles under city lights, because they can filter the city lights out. So I can look at a nebula or a galaxy in my backyard, and they can image those objects within 5 to 8 minutes, and be able to see them in the eyepiece. And of course, I can download them and record them wherever I can keep them. But my goal is really for visual astronomy, to be able to see them through the eyepiece is what I've always wanted to do. I never pursued astrophotography prior to this.
You're a member of the Los Angeles Astronomical Society as well?
Yes, LAAS. Yeah.
Cool. And
have you ever discovered an object?
No. The only object that would be the easiest, or not say the easiest, but practical to try to discover would be a comet. And the only way you're going to do that is by imaging the sky after sunset over and around where the sun set, right? Because the bigger telescopes around the world are not going to be looking in that direction. There's too much light from the sun. They're too sensitive. So they're going to be looking elsewhere, and they're going to be looking a lot farther out in space. So you're not going to beat them with the telescope that I have. But if there's a comet that comes out from behind the sun, it's going to come out from that direction. And my telescope, I could look just after sunset and try to scan that part of the sky. And if I saw something from that part, a little fuzzy dot, I could discover a comet that way. That could take 30 years of doing that. And I don't have the time or the patience to do it, nor the location. Really, I would need to be probably in darker skies than city to pick up something that faint.
I wanted to ask you if there were any dark zones where you live in California, because it seems so built up. There's only one here in Nova Scotia, one certified dark zone.
Yeah, there's the mountains. I can go to the mountains. We have a dark sky site for the astronomy club. It's in Fraser Park in the mountains. It's about an hour and 45-minute drive out. and I can go 2 hours plus to go to the desert, Joshua Tree and all that. So you got to go way the hell out in the boondocks to get to really decent dark skies. And they're still not as dark as they're going to be in other places, but they work okay for that kind of viewing and things like that. You can see some things that are you're not going to be able to see in the city as well.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that observatory in Los Angeles, where of course you filmed the episode Future's End, some scenes there, and there's a scene in the documentary where you're there as well with Robert Picardo.
Yep.
And it's right in the middle of course, Los Angeles, one of the most dense light pollution cities in the world, right? So,
yeah.
But it was built at a
we go up there once a month with the astronomy club. We'll be there this tomorrow night. As a matter of fact, we go there once a month, usually on a Saturday, and we set up all our telescopes on the front lawn for people to come up and observe. The general public to look through the telescopes, and so I'll be doing it again tomorrow night. And the telescope that's there is a big, large refractor. So generally, what they're looking at is the bright stars or planets, or the moon, one of the three. And that telescope is magnificent on those objects. It's designed for looking at those things. So that's what they look at there, which is fine in the city. You don't need to be in outside the city to look at anything you can see with the naked eye is bright enough to see with the telescope. So that's not an issue. The stuff that I would be looking at in some of the larger, maybe a Dobsonian or something else that's pretty big on their front lawn would be something that's fairly bright, like the Orion Nebula, for example. We can look at that within the city with a medium-sized telescope and bring it in because it's so bright. Even shows up in the city lights. That kind of thing we can see. Bright clusters, the Pleiades and the double cluster in Perseus, we can see those in the city. Not as in much detail, but we can see them because they're bright enough to see. So that's it. My telescope, with one of the images you were showing, those nebulas and things, those are deep sky. Yeah, that is the dumbbell. And you can see the colors. My telescope will also bring in the colors of the nebulas as well.
Wow.
Yeah, that color came through in your telescope.
Oh, yeah. I didn't process
what
you see in the eyepiece. Yeah,
wow.
They're that sensitive. This is all new technology. Those are about 3 years old, those telescopes. And, of course, just the way that you have iPhone, whatever number it is now, they're going to keep improving and keep improving. Keep improving. Every year is going to be another model. They've already got new models out this year. And other companies are doing the same thing. Celestron has their version. They just came out with it's even bigger than mine. It'll do even more, I think, in terms of what it can capture. And there's some small portable devices you can get for $500-600 that'll do something similar as well. Longer exposure times. Those are more like CCD cameras. But the light stacking is specific to this Unistellar because it does it really, really fast. The other ones take a long time. It take an hour, take something like that. This one does it in minutes, and so that you can use it standing there with the eyepiece. And that's the difference. And it's relatively portable. Fits in a backpack. You put it in a backpack. And it's simple. There's nothing to it. Works with your iPhone. It goes off it has Wi-Fi built in, so it communicates with your cell phone, and it uses your cell phone GPS to know where it is, so it can align itself in 15 seconds or less.
Yeah.
So it's really amazing, and it's all brand spanking new.
One question here from Worldmind is, have you enjoyed the celestial lineup these past few weeks with our solar system? I guess the planets are aligning right now.
Yeah. We, when we're up there, I think it was last month. There was a good alignment last month, in fact. Pretty much all the planets were up. Venus was coming across Saturn, right next to it, Jupiter, Mars, right across the sky. So you can just pop off each one. Fantastic. It's an opportunity, especially for the general public, to be able to see these objects. And many of them have never, ever looked through the eyepiece of a telescope before. And that is something else, man. All of them.
It is.
Yeah, all of them tend to say, hey, is that a picture you put in there? And it's always that response, if they see Saturn and Saturn's rings very easily and see the moon and the craters on the moon that close up, mind blowing.
I remember the first time I looked at Saturn because the way the colors on yours blew me away. I'm expecting there really colorful pictures of Saturn, and I looked through it and I was like, wait, yeah, so it's white. Yeah, Saturn white.
Yeah, you're not.
Yeah.
You're gonna need something real big to get
Yeah.
any hint of a color on Saturn.
Uh,
Thing really big. The
but seeing
Griffith,
the rings is still amazing.
yeah, the Griffith, the refractor can get it'll get a tiny bit of color on Saturn, just the faintest shade of brown haze. You'll see a little bit of it. It'll pick up a little bit of that, but you need something that large to bring in any kind of color. Jupiter will also get some haze. It'll get some faint streaks of light brown and a little bit of orange, just a tiny bit on the cloud bands of Jupiter as well. That one's a really magnificent telescope for that kind of thing. But for ours, the personal stuff that you're going to buy at Explore Scientific or Celestron or whoever it might be, you can get some good images. You can see the red spot on Jupiter and some other stuff pretty easily without spending a whole lot of money, really. My telescope, the Unistellar, is pretty expensive, but it's less expensive than doing astrophotography. You want to do astrophotography, you're in thousands and thousands of dollars. But mine, for what you pay for it, it's all one package. You don't need anything else. There's no accessories. It's telescope, cell phone, done.
So what draws you to the stars, Tim Russ?
A fascination with the cosmos, and are we alone? Is a major question. Something we're all asking ourselves now, and many scientists are dedicated to trying to discover. Are we alone? The fact that this Earth is here at all is way beyond just chalking it up as a miracle. Way beyond that. There's so many zeros before the one that you can't count them. So many variables involved in us being here at all. So if one considers the origin of the universe, how it began, whether it was the Big Bang or whether it was multi-universes banging into each other and whatever, at one point in time there was nothing in this universe but a couple of gases. That's it. And from those gases, all those molecules are the same as the ones that exist in all of us today. So the universe, in a sense, has evolved to be able to examine and study and wonder about itself. We're all part of that same process. But we are now intelligent, right? The universe couldn't do that.
Mostly.
Well, mostly. We have conscious awareness, and we are exploring, and we're curious about the secrets of the universe and what's going on out there. Man, it is crazy out there. All the things that are happening, and all the discoveries. And the next discovery is going to be: is there intelligent life out there? Can we actually pinpoint it?
Well, and I think that often, the question I think a lot of humanity asks itself, since science fiction came along and we've been able to gaze up at the stars and understand it more, is are we ready? I think is often the kind of the feeling are we still so petty and divisive, and we have these interconflicts, and right now the state of politics and the world feels not maybe we have.
No, we're in that terrible Deep Space Nine episode right now, Dave. We're in, what is it?
Far Beyond the Stars? No.
The one with the districts.
You mean what's it called?
Yes, that's where we're living right now.
Civil defense? No, not civil defense.
No.
Hold on. Why am I?
You know what I'm talking about, Tim? The Deep Space Nine episode where it's basically now. I think didn't that happen this year?
It was 2024. Yeah. So they go back. The
sanctuary districts. Yeah, they put all the poor people into the sanctuary districts. This
past
is
tense. Thank you, Chad.
Yeah, past tense. Yeah. That's where we're living right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I think that if there was a discovery, confirmation, if you will, worldwide confirmation that intelligent life existed somewhere else, it would be a news story for about 2 weeks, and then it would be replaced by something Trump did. And
that makes me sad. I hope that's not true.
It would be a story for about 2 weeks. They would cover it in every angle you possibly could imagine, right? How does your dog feel about this? Whatever. Everything for about 2 weeks, and then it's going to be replaced by something else. Our attention span is about that long. And that's it. That would be it. The rest of us, who are fascinated by it would, of course, carry on, and we would love to know more and more and more, and wonder about it and all that good stuff. But as a news story, as a discovery, it would not even be it might just be a speed bump in the road and that's it, man. People would be, okay, we got this. And then they go right back to doing whatever they were doing. Because that's just the way this Trek is inviting and it's alluring because it takes place in a future that we don't have all of this nonsense and craziness that we have today. I mean, that's essentially what it is.
That's why it's my comfort food.
Yeah, let's say it's opposed to Soylent Green. Okay, it's not Soylent Green. It's a
great movie.
Yeah, great movie, but a little darker on the future part. But it's a looking into a future that's a lot more positive and uplifting and forward thinking and evolved than what we have today. And that's what, that's one of the things that science fiction does. It explores, realms that we don't live in, explores different scenarios and different timelines and things that different possibilities that human beings can exist in. And you can tell a story one way or the other. You can do it positive, or you can do it dark. Either way, it's not going to be that easy for the human race over the next 100 years. It's not going to be that easy. We got a lot of challenges that are coming. And, eventually, hopefully we will, evolve in a creeping sort of way to enlightenment in all these areas and try to find some common goals, some common priorities that have to be addressed and focus on those common priorities amongst every country, every belief system, every religion, every political ideology, something that unifies us, that is a priority for mankind to focus on. And it may just be, resources, water, food, things like that. And it may be the health of the planet, etc. So those would be the first thing. Those would be the first hurdles that we have to.
Well, as an environmentalist, I don't know if it's going to be the health and the planet one. Like, I fear you're correct about the news cycle going on after 2 weeks, because as an environmentalist, I'm like, this one's the environmental alarm bell. It's just like, nope, that wasn't the one.
Yeah,
all right. No, this is one. No.
We'll be facing. We're going to be facing the repercussions of what we've done. Firsthand. We already are now, but it's probably going to get worse. And eventually people are going to come around to realizing, okay, we got to do this, we got to do that. Plus, just the survival of human beings on the planet. Populations, if they continue to grow, the resources are going to be strained, and eventually we're going to figure out what we're going to do. Are we going to set up, water reclamation plants on all the coastlines of the countries? Are we going to move everybody to the center of Australia, since all that land is available, and irrigate it and allow it for irrigation and crops and people? I don't know. You're going to have to do something with the population of the world. Okay,
yeah, back in Canada, if you want to come up. But
it ain't going to be me that does it. It's got to be somebody who's growing up right now is going to have to deal with all this, and they're going to have to come to terms with reality and come to terms with what's going on, and stop pissing and moaning about whatever it is that doesn't have anything to do with anything. So that big picture, they're going to have to focus on. Have at it, Hoss. I wish them all the luck.
Even in like the fictional Star Trek universe, like things get really bad before they get better. Like there's this World War, then they meet the Vulcans, but it doesn't get better right away. We see in other snippets that that court that Q has in Next Generation Davan, where that's set after First Contact, right? Like the one where, and eventually they get to, by the time you get to Archer's time, things are pretty good. But that's like 80, 90 years later after First Contact.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Trek is essentially just a giant sort of sci-fi version of what's going on in the real world. We have to you're dealing with different alien species, which would be different cultures on this planet, different belief systems, different political ideologies. We're at each other's throats in some cases over political ideology. Right. Even today in 2025, for God's sakes, people are still litigating what happened in the middle of the last century, and
we're supposed to be in a trade war with you right now.
It's on and off. It's on and off again. So
Man, I'll tell you, I don't, it's.
You're among friends here if you want to vent for a minute. You're among friendly Canadians, so
Yeah.
go ahead.
Kate Mulgrew got so many questions that last night on the cruise in her Q&A session about like we're in perilous times now. What would Janeway do? What advice would Janeway give to the world? And she gave this amazing speech. Like this is the United States of America, and we're a free democracy, and we're going to rise up. And it was all.
She kicks some ass too, man. I would mess with Janeway.
Don't get Kate started on that stuff. We did that at a convention not long ago. Same thing. We just got on that. And the last thing we were talking about is Trek. We were talking all politics. They told us not to get into the politics on the convention cruise. I said, and don't get me started on it either. I will go to town on all of that shit in about a minute. It's a half an hour diatribe if I get going. But
I got the time if you do. Don't even.
We are.
David Brooks, I think it was Brooks, is the guy that I was listening to today earlier, and he made a good point. And I think somebody else made a similar point that every country throughout history, including our own, has gone through some kind of crisis, and this is our crisis, and it happens to everybody. It happens all the time, and usually, if not all the time, you come out of it. And so I can only look forward and think in those terms that yes, it's a shitstorm. Yes, it's god awful. Yes, it's this, that, and the other thing. It's chaos. But we go through these growing pains. They're growing pains. They're crises, and they can shift. And he was saying that the evolution of a society or culture doesn't necessarily, if it's on a smooth, easy track, it may not evolve as well as going through the growing pains.
Right.
As going through the crises. These crises may be a lesson to say, okay, we don't want to go back and do that again. And that may very well be the benefit, long term, of this mess that we're in right now. Instead of that's a way of looking at it. I think he makes.
I think that's a positive way, an optimistic, a very Star Trek way of looking at it. Absolutely.
Well, they say crisis spurs innovation. Well, what if this crisis spurs our societal innovation, not technological?
That's exactly.
Maybe we come together a little.
Yeah, that's
more
exactly the point. That's exactly the point he's making. These things, and they have happened. They have happened. There's proof that they have happened. World War II, Germany was an absolute mess, on the planet. But hey, we're not experiencing any world wars and haven't experienced a world war since then, have we? That's pretty interesting, because before that, there was world wars all the time on this planet. Now we don't have any world wars. We have localized skirmishes or incidents, but not world wars. So look how we've actually come a little farther as a result. Europe was killing each other for centuries, and now they have the European Union.
Yeah, right.
Now they're working together. You see that all those times, all those crises, they changed people. They changed the ways those societies work. We're watching it right now happen in Europe. So you have these things that we're in the middle of this crisis we have. We're only 250 some odd years old as a country. We've never been invaded by a foreign country. Makes a big difference right there.
Yeah.
We invaded you once.
That was before we were a country.
Ran.
That's
but
yeah.
That's
British North America technically, but
technically a small. No, our shores have never been invaded. We've never been conquered, never been taken over.
1812, baby. Yep.
So at the end of the day, we're still babes in the woods, and we have growing pains, and these are all growing pains. And as much as I despise the current situation, and it just sickens me, it is part of our history, and it's going to be part of our history, and perhaps an evolutionary catalyst to our culture to get us farther ahead. We'll see.
Let's hope.
I feel the same thing with like this recent crisis with Trump and Canada and trying to make us a state or whatever. And it's been heartwarming to see how Canada has really come together, how united we've been.
Yeah. Nothing like uniting a country by having a common jackass enemy.
Foe. Yeah.
An easy enemy.
That goes without saying. Almost anywhere, anytime. Yeah, you've got this big nonsense Karen down below you, and instead of a country that had any sense whatsoever, and doing things that are, and I think that even Trudeau and the rest of them all expected this to happen if he was to take office, and it turns out that he did. And God Almighty, it's our system of government, it's our system of elections, our system of all that shit. It is what it is, and we're kind of stuck with it for the time being. And until our own people, wake up, smell the toast, get their heads out of their asses, realize what the big picture is and how important the big picture is, to realize that what's on the dinner menu of the fucking Titanic does not matter because the Titanic is going down. You have to worry about saving the ship. Until they realize what the big picture is and what's most important, they're going to be stuck with what they have now. Hopefully they'll realize that at some point.
I sure hope so. Not just for America's sake, but for the rest of the world as well.
Yes, for the rest of the world as well. Yes. Yes. And the rest of the world, as they have been, and yourself included, you guys can pitch in and resist. It's about resisting. It's about fighting back, and not giving them what they want in any way, shape, or form. And I agree with anything that Canada does or Europe does at this point. I 100% with them. 100% with them. You fight back, you push back, and teach these asswipes a lesson.
Do you got a resist today handy there, Dave? Sound effects, Dave.
I'll find something here.
Right.
And we've had you for an hour, so I want to be conscious of your time here. We do have one question here from Worldmind again. He's saying, before you go, I'd love to hear some of your top book recommendations if you have any.
Oh, that's a great question.
As a sci-fi fan, Dean Koontz' The Taking is one of my favorites. Short story, The Langoliers by Stephen King.
Yeah, it's a classic one.
That's incredible stories. Both of those were some of my favorites. I've read Asimov and Greg Bear, and I've read Arthur C. Clarke and all that good stuff. I've read all those stories, but The Langoliers was just conceptually a masterpiece of what was happening in that story. Just loved it. And Dean Koontz, The Taking. Wow, that's nuts. That story. It's a page turner. I want to call it a page turner because he doesn't meander from the plot. The plot is all the way through the story. It just keeps going forward. There's no offshoots. There's no backstory. There's no nothing. You're just in that thing and you are moving forward. And it never quite answers the question of what happened all the way to the end. Yeah, good stuff.
Absolutely. I want to get a musical recommendation from you too, because I have one for you as well. Now, that album that's mostly featured on YouTube there, is it just self-titled? Is it just like Tim Russ?
Which one?
The
Tim Russ. Is it Tim Russ CD?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. That's self-titled.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that you do Crossroads on there too, because I'm a big Robert Johnson guy. So.
Oh yeah, that was done via Crescendo Records. They produced that album. The subsequent albums I've done my own producing on them. Cushion Gaza is the song you were talking about I don't know which song you mentioned that you heard in you were curious about in the show, the very beginning song that you liked, Dave.
Would that be from that album?
Cushion Gaza is its own CD. It's a self-titled CD, Cushion Gaza.
Okay. That was you played that song on the ship.
Played that song on the ship, yes. And the other ones, like Crossroads, I don't know if I got to Love the One You With. I don't think I did. Crossroads. There was another blues track on there that I played as well. Not all the songs, obviously, that I played on the cruise were on CDs. There was a lot of them that were not. But, and there's some that were. But I've got at least 4 or 5 CDs. Lifeline being the latest. And I'm pretty sure I played at least 1 or 2 songs from Lifeline as well that was on there. The blues stuff is stuff that, I want to say blues, rock, classic rock, roots music that's the type of stuff that I do.
Yeah, me too. That's why we need to jam, Tim.
Fairly wide variety within those lanes. I don't do anything outside those lanes. I'm not doing disco. I'm not doing new age. I'm not doing techno pop. Although the music video I have out does have Yes, does have an
That's
80s.
80s. That's an 80s jam. I love it. It's a very good jam.
was
I
very
deliberately did it that way because I kind of dug that sound and stuff. So I do
Very
have
good.
that. But the rest of them are all kind of classic rock, roots music sort of feel, and stuff that'll work with my configuration of the band. I have to consider that. I gotta sing everything. So
It was the range, that range you just talked about, that I noticed on that album, actually, that made me have a couple recommendations regionally here in Nova Scotia for you. It reminded me a lot of Charlie Acourt. I don't know if you've ever heard of Charlie Acourt.
No, I haven't heard.
Check out Charlie Acourt and check out Matt Anderson if you're not familiar with Matt Anderson.
Right.
Those are a couple of regional East Coast Canada blues guys, but like they have that similar range that you have, like a little bit of soul there. Even like we'll kind of go down into the country realm as well.
Right. Cool.
Yeah, I think you'd enjoy them. So what would be a recommendation from you?
Charlie, what was his name?
Acourt. So it's A apostrophe the word court. Charlie Acourt.
And then
Matt Anderson. And then Matt Anderson's the other one. Like you won't find many acoustic bluesmen like Matt Anderson.
Wow. Yeah. As far you were asking about recommendations that I would have for music recommendations, or
music recommendation. Yeah.
Oh man, well I've always liked, I've loved Hornsby stuff, and I really like his stuff a lot.
Me too.
I dig the melodies, and I'm not a piano player, but I just love his piano work. I love his sounds. I love his melodies. I do at least 2 of his songs. I did both of them on the cruise, and I really enjoy his music a lot. Peter Gabriel, I love his stuff as well. I have been ever since he left Genesis. And so there's a couple, and then there's just odds and ends. I mean, a lot of stuff that I just pick up here and there that I dig, and
you played this one song on the cruise. It was like, it's like when you're out there in the night. I'm not doing it justice. Alone.
Just play your phone video, Dave.
I should just play the video. Hold on. Then you'll know what I mean.
Yeah, I would be curious. I just need to if I hear the song, I know.
Yeah, just give me 10 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah, here we go.
Oh yes.
Brown Shoes?
Proud Shoes.
Is that your song or is that a cover?
Nope, that is a cover. So that's Proud Shoes. It's
Proud Shoes.
It's Soapbox Preacher, and that is Robbie Robinson of the band.
Robbie great Canadian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Robbie Robinson. That's his song, Soapbox Preacher. Proud Shoes. Proud Shoes.
Proud Shoes. I'm gonna have to check that out now.
Yeah, the song is, and we see them in Los Angeles, in the big cities. You see on the street corners, the preachers, the people that stand there with a bullhorn, and they're preaching all day long to nobody who's listening, right? The song is about those guys. That's what it's about.
Wow. Well, yeah. I love that was my favorite one you played that night. So
thank you very much. Soapbox Preacher. That is who they're talking about, and I see these guys all the time here in the city. They stand there all day long, at the top of their lungs, preaching, on a bullhorn or whatever, to anybody who will listen, and nobody's pretty much paying attention to them, but they're out there all day long. And it's a song about them. Where do they go at the end of the night? Where do they go when the day's over? Where do they sleep? What are they doing? And they dedicate their lives to standing there and spreading the gospel or whatever it is they got going on to anybody that would listen. People typically don't. They just do their thing. So he just about them. Yeah, about them in particular. I'm not particularly religious. I just thought the song was interesting because it's a story about something that's real, in our society, and something people have witnessed and seen, and you wonder about. You don't think about those guys, and yet he's writing a song about them. So I thought it was interesting.
Well, I like that even more now that I know it's Robbie Robertson too.
Robbie Robertson.
Well,
yes.
Your song "Lead Me Home" is a jam too.
"Lead Me Home." That's
right up my alley.
That's an old standard. That's an old standard.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. That's an old standard. It's not mine. It's an old standard.
Oh.
It's been covered before. The majority of songs that I do are what I call B-side covers. They're obscure covers. They're soundtracks at the end of a movie. You know, if I hear something on that, I may pick off a song that I hear on a soundtrack when the credits are rolling. I think, man, that's a really cool jam. What is that?
Oh, like your Bear McCreary All Along the Watchtower version? That's
wow, man.
awesome, by the way.
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing. I love that song.
Crazy arrangement, man.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't do that arrangement. They just asked me to come and sing it, to put the vocals on it. I just performed it live with the Roddenberry's band based in Philadelphia. Just this past year, I was up in Philadelphia and we sang that song live. We played it live. Oh my God, was that amazing to have those guys. They reproduced that thing perfectly, and I was able to sing it live. And I had not done that before. I'd only recorded it. And, you know, anything that's kind of odd or just out of there, and I happen to catch it. I could be in a store and hear a piece of music, and I just take out the phone and Shazam it. It's like, what the hell is that song? That's really badass. That's cool. Let me see if I can take it home, and I'll rearrange it, and I'll get it in my key, and I'll send it to the guys, you know, and make a scratch track for it, and I'll practice it, and we'll plug it in and see if it works. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But I like sort of obscure B-side covers, rather than trying to cover stuff that, you know, everybody recognizes. Yeah, you know, I've got to do it.
I'm always like,
yeah.
Everyone's like, I'm playing this song by Redbone. And people are always like, oh, come and get your love. I'm always like, no. Which Queen of New Orleans?
Or obscure.
Exactly.
And I've got a couple of mashups. You heard the mashups. I do, Moon Dance, but I do it with a Peter Gunn groove to it.
Oh yeah.
And I did a mashup with Smoke on the Water and play that funky music. So.
Oh yeah. That was also a killer when you played that on the ship. Played that funky music. Oh my God, I loved it. So good.
Fun times, and a different version of the Beatles, Eleanor Rigby. Total up tempo groove of that thing. I did not record that, so that's one of the songs I have not recorded. I might go if I go in the studio. I might record it again. We'll see.
Mr. Tim Russ, you are a true Renaissance man. I am in complete awe, and I am so thrilled we got to spend this time together today. You, thanks for being with us. We hope we come back one day and talk to us some more. And what else you got going on in your life right now that you wanted to talk about?
Mostly right now in the early development stages of a feature film of mine that I'm going to be directing probably later this year, summer or fall. It's either in Los Angeles or Atlanta. I can't remember where they're going to go, but it's a Lionsgate project with Lux Studios based in LA. It's a creature flick based on mythological characters, mythological storylines, but takes place today. And so it'll be fun. I'll be shooting that at some point in time this year. Right now, they're working on casting for it. That's the big thing.
These like American myths, European myths.
It's going to be it's ancient myth is what it is. It goes back way back in terms of time, 2,000-3,000 years. So
Babylonian myths.
Babylonian myth, and it takes place, but the timeline is today. It takes place in modern time. But the premise of the characters of the creature, we'll see how it goes. I would be directing it, not necessarily in the producing aspect of it. That's not what I enjoy doing. I like shooting and stuff. So, with any luck at all, I'll be rolling later on this year. We shall see.
And you're directing this, you say?
Yes.
If I could ask you one more question now that we mentioned directing.
Mm-hmm.
What was it a big decision because you directed Star Trek Gods and Men, the fan film, correct? Was that like a big leap to go from like proper Star Trek actor to like jump into the fan film realm? Is that like a big consideration you had to make? Or?
No. I started directing on the show. I directed Living Witness on Voyager. So I already had my chops together by the time that the other project. And I also directed I don't know how many shows for the FBI Files and a few others in that company before that as well. When the producer of that show asked me to come in and direct that particular Gods and Men and Renegades both, he just asked me and I said, yeah, sure, I'll go do it. They didn't have a script, so they had to write the script for it and kind of pitched in on the story to the concepts, the story, and stuff like that. We got a pretty solid story, and we were able to get the actors involved, and he was able to raise enough money to get it done mechanically. And it had a couple of rough spots in terms of the process of shooting, but we managed to get through it. All of those, it doesn't matter what the genre is, doesn't matter what the storyline is, doesn't matter about any of that stuff. As long as the script is solid and reliable and shootable, I call it shootable, I'll jump on it and do it. I've shot everything from medieval to, sci-fi, to drama, to comedy. I've done all that stuff. So I have done across the board in those genres. And that's just another project to me. It didn't matter. As long as the stuff is written well, I'll jump on board. I turned down one project that was offered to me, I was asked to consider directing. I just turned down one because it was culturally could not identify with the story. It was a cultural thing that I just didn't have any background or experience in. And so I just didn't feel comfortable taking on that project without having something in my past to draw on as a natural, having lived culturally in that environment to understand it. I just didn't feel comfortable doing it. But everything else is fine. It's a story of one type or another, whether it's biopic or whether it's real, fictional. It doesn't matter as long as the story's written well and the people behind it are competent. The producers, they know what they're doing. That helps. As long as it's that, I'll jump on board and I'll shoot it.
So on the cruise, Robert Picardo said, once I looked into directing, I figured out I don't want to do this. I just want to focus on what my part in the story.
Yes.
Was that your feeling? Like, was directing the episode Living Witness like too much? You felt being on the show and doing it at the same time, or did you?
No. Living Witness being on the show was just a great big creative challenge, and since that time, because I had so much support from everyone, everybody showed up and everybody delivered, and it was just wonderful. And I had plenty of time to plan it out. It was just a big, fat creative challenge. I had to sweat the bullets as to whether or not the producers were happy with what I did. I didn't have to go back and reshoot anything, because sometimes that happens. And it's great. The restraints are off when you're shooting an independent project like Gods and Men or Renegades. Now it's all me. I can make a lot of decisions about what's going on the screen. And the only thing about that is, as much as I look forward to doing it, is that, after 3 days of working on it, and I haven't slept in 3 days, and I'm exhausted and fucking tired as hell during the day, dragging my ass. I keep thinking, why in the hell am I doing this? What did I sign up for this for? What was I thinking about? That's usually what happens, because the days are really long. You don't really, you can't really get away from it at night when you leave, because you have to plan for the next day. Mm-hmm. And somebody's going to be calling you about something that you have to deal with the night before, after you've worked all day, and you got to get ready for the next day. So that's the tough part once you're actually in the directing phase, not the pre-phase, not planning and all that, but when the first day of shooting it starts, and you've got to make your day, shooting X number of pages a day, make sure everything's done in the can, and then you've got to go. And it's a long day; it's 12 hours, sometimes longer than that. And you go home, and then you've got to deal with what's planning for the next day, and if there are any train wrecks or fires you got to put out. And then you come in the next day, and it's another long day, and then it's another long day, and it's just you're walking zombie, at the end of 3 or 4 or 5 days. And that's when you start thinking about, man, what the hell did I sign up for this for? But that's the only thing. But it's the creative challenge is what drives you. So.
Right. Well, you did excellent with it. Absolutely. On screen and behind the camera. That's one of the best episodes, I think, of the show.
Oh, it's a great episode.
Which one? Oh, A Living Witness?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the best.
I was lucky enough to draw that episode. Very lucky. I could have gotten a dog, but I got that one.
Is it just straws? Like, they don't have anybody in mind? You're just drawing straws for these episodes?
Totally random. That was the episode that was going to be shot that week. And they assigned me that episode. And consequently, I loved the concept. Again, I love history. I'm fascinated by history. I'm fascinated by the interpretation of history and the ramifications of how history is interpreted and how it's told. And that story hit all those buttons, and I was just wonderful to have that storyline with Bob Picardo and the whole dilemma within that culture of having to tell the truth about their past. I mean, what a great concept, to explore as a society. So I was very happy to have that. Very lucky to draw it, and I'm glad it turned out the way it turned out. So
me too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I like I told you, I'll talk to you for as long as you let me. But I'm sure you want to get going. Thanks so much. Would you give us a I'm Tim Russ and Live Long and Podcast as our closer out here tonight.
You got it. Hello, I'm Tim Russ. Live long and podcast.
See you next time, everybody.